Okay, this is the next part of the reflection from Maidstone Studios, as that last video was getting quite long where it was talking about the set and everything to do with that. This one is to focus more on the people, so the key personnel that we were working with for Maidstone Studios. That was Del Brown, who actually has a website which I've looked at, and it is very interesting as it shows just how much of a practicing director he is, as well as the tutor for those students, or as well as he was for the tuition of those students. Which structure of the organisation, so how were there, and also what companies there were and how they were interacting. So the students from Rochester campus, Maidstone campus, the lighting company that came in, as well as the building itself. Not though the building is a person, the company that would own it. And what was my role inside of all of this, and what were the roles of the other people around me? Well, starting off with Del Brown, he is a practitioner that works with large companies, that is very, very accomplished. From looking at his website, although websites are normally written with a slight bias towards the person that is owning them, it is very much a very good director, and actually does tuition with students on stuff like the cutting desk and directing it and working with the camera operatings. He actually has footage of working with some of the students that we were working with on his website. So not our group particularly, but he was showing and demonstrating his ability to tutor by having footage of him teaching the students at Maidstone about the cutting disc and the directing, so calling of cameras and the organisation in that way. This isn't something that is completely new because I did it with Euroscope, but basically when you introduce a camera, you call that camera to be ready and prep it for that, and then you call it in. Same with lighting cues, sound cues, anything that will be brought in. You normally cue it to prep it, and then you call for it to be brought in, as there will be other people around you doing that. Also, it means that someone on the cutting desk can do that whilst the person next to them directs it and looks at what they want to come in from 5-6 cameras at once. The actual structure of the organisation was fairly good as well. It was mostly run by Del Brown on the day, though there was support from another tutor, which was, I think, their main tutor when they don't have more visiting professionals. He was a tutor that helped me a lot, and I talked with about the actual facilities, although I can't remember his name, which unfortunately is a bad thing. But he was one of the few tutors that I actually talked to about what the facilities were and actually what was running and how it was going. As I know this is something I had to do, I just didn't know the questions at the time. I didn't ask any particular ones to guide towards this, but I understand how it's structured. The facilities that UCA have at Maidstone Studios is basically one of the upper floors, is cleaned and is used as a student complex for TV production. So there is camera equipment, there is stores of stuff, and there is space for people to edit and work on the films that they create. As well as that, there was a lighting company that was brought in on the same day that we were shooting. If they had come in before, which is one thing that I would have preferred them to do, then they would bring in, set up the lighting, and they actually have their own separate workspace to control lighting from, if they have remote controlled lighting. So if they had lighting cues to turn on or off, to rotate or follow, then they can set that up in a space at the end. However, for the production that there was, the lighting companies came in. They worked, I believe, with the people of the studio, which was 1 or 2 technical staff that helped raise and lower the beams. The lights were then fitted to them. They were big, I believe, some sort of traditional filament light. In a large case, there was a filter colour put on them, though I believe they came with filters already built in. And big barn doors, they were then shot down onto the set to light it with a fairly red hue. It would have possibly been slightly better to have it in a yellowy one, as it would have meant that we had to add less blue with the LED lighting. So the lighting companies came in on the day, which is a problem, as I had nothing to do with knowing what they were. I thought it was the actual studios came in and provided that, but it didn't really help that much that I didn't ask questions with them, because we didn't have that much to do with them. A lot of our interactions with them were basically Gary telling us that they want the space to put up this, and they communicated more with Gary before coming to us, which is fine, because in the structure we are, it doesn't really make sense to keep coming and asking students to move and working like that. You normally go to the person in charge of the people that you want to get out of the way, and then that one person can move everyone in one go, and you don't have to keep repeating and asking multiple times. It's not bad they only had that one day, but it's not great. It was very rushed on their side of trying to get it lit at the same time we're trying to put up, and almost working out the lighting at the same time the test filming was going on. So it was something that wasn't that great, and it was something that I wasn't really around that much for. For a large part of when they were working, we actually were asked, or we were suggested to go and have a break so that we were out of their way. We had very little to do with the lighting companies, so I know even less about them. However, the students themselves, I do know something about. Okay, this is a cut after the first one, as I've had to go away and research the names, because it's two students that I didn't particularly work with. These were two students that were particularly definite in our collaboration with Maidstone Studios students. At their studios in Maidstone, the students there learn about filming, camera operating, different types of camera operating, cutting desks, sound engineering to an extent, everything. If it's the digital and the practical side of filming the sets, they do it. Down to even calling cameras and doing stuff like that. Which, thanks to working with Euroscope, I actually have an understanding of all the camera work that they're doing, down to like the cameras they're using are 17 versions behind the ones that I was using on the last project, and I was using wireless setups and still having to run BNC cable everywhere. It's the small purple stuff that they run. Really nice. It's much better than the old style of cables, which I've also tried to use. They're a pain. But apart from the camera operating, which was quite good, probably been better to call slightly more, but maybe not necessary. Aside, not props, not part of this, but a lot of the stuff that they do for what they did is quite good. They come and present an idea and go through like that. There's not really much in the way that they could have developed it, as they didn't really think much about it. They could have come and said, you know what, we want exactly this and we want it like this, but then it doesn't let the design teams do much. So the collaboration between the two groups of students to come forward with the finished product that we produced as the set builders or set makers or the designers for it as well is very good, because it is not specifically designed by one group of students. It instead has lots of different people working on it to design something that is a collaborative idea between the two groups, which is quite good because the students seem to all work together then and all sort of feed off each other from the peers inside the group. The Maidstone students, in what they did, they would have been operating cameras and working on sound and camera work. I don't believe I need to document and detail and talk about the camera operating and how that went. I will talk about the lighting, because they would have been hopefully in charge of the people, or being able to instruct the people lighting the set and say, can you bring back the purple a bit more, and talked with them possibly more and try to communicate about changing the lighting. Because of that, it's something that we had to go back and we had to try and improve it on the day. And even before then, there were things that it was much more beneficial to have. So if we'd had the TV, which I can see from looking at Del Brown's website, they were using in rehearsals to show TV here and graphic feeds to it and how that works. But it would have been much better to just have a note there, and we have it for half a week to make sure that it fits, and we can do all the adjustments in-house rather than on-site. And it's really oversights like that. So sticky notes do the signs for the TV production. It doesn't really work because they print them out wrong, or they have the wrong size, which did happen, and then they go and ruin the whole thing, and it has to be repainted on the day. They also light it red, so all the white in the set becomes red, and all the white doors on the sliding, like your prize is, on the sliding like panel, it didn't work. It looked pink because they lit it red and it was white, and it bled over and it looked pink, and it looked horrible because they didn't think about communicating, okay, it's going to be lit red. That means anything white is going to be red, anything red is going to be more red. It's how you communicate between all the different compartments. Maidstone did help, and they did send back measurements of the TV, but it's okay, what's the width, the height and the depth? Okay, how am I meant to see from, you've said 8, 4, 3, how long is the 8? Is there like 10 mil at either end that's 4, and you've just considered to say that's 4 and the rest of it's 8, so I actually need to build it to be 8 with just the ends? Really difficult. The other side of that is the students. The teamwork was very good and it worked quite well, but I would say in the future I need to consider how I'm going to take people away and say, okay, I'd like to have 2 people to help me build the sets today. Tomorrow should be easier, you can have 1 back. And also having technical drawings that are all correct in their numbers, because that really does work out as a problem. So there were many points in the students where they could have worked better, and there are students that could have worked more. Skylar and Holly and some other, Molly a bit as well. They were there and they did work, but they didn't really put in as much, as there was a core team of only 7 students that were there every day. They worked overtime and they really pushed the project forward. Of course there are students that are off site doing work experience, but it's a case of there was only a week to do it in, and there was quite pressure for a lot of students of worrying that it may not get done. I didn't personally have those problems, as it shouldn't take that long to make the set, but it's just very much bearing in mind how much of a time constraint there was and how good it actually ended up. There weren't really any big problems, there were no massive arguments, or none that weren't already under the water. Moving forward, it would be better not to have them. It would be better to have a group that is more built so that it works cohesively and in such a way where you don't have problems arising of only 2 weeks because UCA students haven't provided everything that a tutor wants, which kind of annoys, because a lot of the materials were there, they just weren't presented to the teacher correctly, or the tutor would then ask for something else. This is more with the Rochester students because of the build teams being held back. It isn't a problem, it's just something that would be beneficial to have explained more thoroughly when it begins next time. As far as any problems with the actual core group or who did work, a lot of Catherine, or Short Catherine as I know her from the group, is the person who did a lot of the bookwork and form filling. T, or Tanuke, did a lot of the design work, as she was, and she is, an incredible digital worker, so she could do a lot of the Illustrator and pull off a lot of the drawings to make CAD files for CNC. I will say though that both of them may benefit from technical experience, but that would be more what I bring to it, of pointing out that 62 degrees and 68 degrees in a triangle doesn't leave you with a lot of wiggle room for a 70-degree angle at the top, and something would need to move in its number work like that, of going through and working everything out. But the general premises of the team were very strong in how they were worked, although it is beneficial possibly to have more people with a more complete skill set in all the areas, as well as a more dedicated painting team that know they're getting themselves in for weeks and weeks of sanding and painting, which I don't think they were entirely aware of. But it was very much a problem thing of people finding out how much work there was and then having problems with it, as well as many people surprisingly being allergic to filler. 2-part wood filler is apparently the largest reactant to our group, as well as a couple of people that have metal allergies. That's it. Hopefully that sort of fills in where the students were. Can't really, or don't want to talk too much in detail about where it is, because hopefully the camera won't die right now. But yes, the groups were quite good, but the communication between Maidstone and Rochester, although we're very close, wasn't always perfect on actually giving some like bits of TV over to us, which we could have actually driven there with enough people. There was enough people that could have driven there, picked it up and brought it back. It's just that sharing of materials, and if you have something you want incorporated, it is very beneficial to a making team to actually have that. The making team that I worked with specifically are actually very good. There were no problems with them, and they were part of what I would define as the core group, which is normally, I work with T and Amy particularly, and both of them were more than capable in actually the practical creation of props, and actually T did a lot of the maths more than me. The project went very well, and hopefully the result is good, as well as trying to conclude it with this video that is recorded way after the last one. That's it for now. Hopefully everything is sort of concluded with this project.